Mr. Varoufakis, speaking on the current pandemic situation, director of important financial organizations have warned about an forthcoming economic crisis even more severe than previous ones, like the Great Depression of 1921, or a more recent one like 2008. What is the world really going to face in the near future?
To begin with, I believe that we should not think of what's happening today as independent of 2008. In 2008, that was our generation's 1929, when Wall Street collapsed. And after that, central banks and governments refloated the banks, the financial sector, big business, but did not create sufficient investment in the jobs of the majority, in the lives of the majority. So when the coronavirus pandemic began, and we had another great recession, which we are going through now, that caught up the world economy and Europe's economy in an already very weak situation, separating massively the world of money from the world of real people. So we are facing a new Great Depression, which we can overcome as long as governments and central banks do not repeat the same old mistakes, as long as they invest heavily in people, in public health, in public goods, and in the green jobs that we need across the world.
And which are the main instruments that the governments could leverage for the economic recovery?
You can see that just like in 2008, very recently, central banks have been printing a lot of money. But it is their practice of giving it to commercial banks, which then do not really have the capacity to push it into real investments. So what we need to do in order to rebalance that equation is we need for governments to coordinate with one another an investment policy, a large-scale green investment plan for the whole of Europe. It would be great if we could do it for the whole world, but at least we could start here in Europe.
In some of the Balkan countries, there is a clear domination of the political scene from the big traditional parties. For example, in Greece, Syriza broke this rule, beating PASOK and Nea Demokratia, and Vedvendosje in Kosovo is another example, but it was just a short dream. Why it seems so impossible to break this domination of the ruling big parties?
Because we don't really live in democracies. We live in oligarchies with elections. And when you have an oligarchy which is in control of the banks, of the media, of big business, then it's extremely difficult for the demos, the people, to play a role in our democracies. So we have a failure of democracy across Europe, and especially in the Balkans. And it will take a lot of work for the demos to get a chance to re-enter democracy.
One of the challenges that Albania is facing right now is the EU integration. The country has just started the negotiation after a long process and still is not fulfilling the EC recommendation. How do you consider the position of the Greek government in this process? Is the integration also in the Athens' interest, and how much did it support Albania during these years?
Speaking as the leader of a political party in Greece's parliament, I think it would be excellent if Albania entered the European Union, because it would further improve relationship between Greece and Albania. It would do away effectively with border controls, with all those impediments to the establishment of the same rule of law and cooperation between our countries. But what we see on behalf of Brussels, on behalf of the powers that be in the center of the European Union, is double standards. On the one hand, they promise North Macedonia, Serbia, Albania, a certain path to integration. And on the other hand, the great powers of the European Union play games amongst themselves. And I shall be very blunt on this. I think that the way in which they delayed the integration process recently has very little to do with Albania or North Macedonia or any Balkan country, and a lot to do with games that French conglomerates and Dutch conglomerates and German conglomerates are playing, because they want to be guaranteed a control of the main businesses in your countries. I'm making this point fully cognizant of how controversial it is, and I make it only because I believe it is true.
What is your personal message for the Albanian as Balkans, Europe and global citizens?
We are facing common challenges, whether it's climate change, the coronavirus, poverty, oligarchy, the rule by the few against the interests of the many. We're in this boat together. We need to have solidarity between our peoples across Europe in order to take our fates back in our hands, not in my hands and your hands, but in the hands of the majority in every country.
Mr. Varoufakis, thank you very much for this interview. It was an honor for us and a pleasure to have you in this interview. Thank you very much.
For me too, thank you.